Ever wonder what separates a pirate from a patriot? For centuries, it wasn't the act, it was the signature. The same ship, the same cannons, the same violence. With a government letter, you were a privateer, a national hero. Without it, you were a criminal headed for the gallows. History calls one a defender, the other a thief. But the ocean waves? They never noticed the difference. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Piracy wasn't a failure of the system. It was the system, outsourced. For most of history, empires didn't eradicate piracy. They authorized it, invested in it, and cashed in. Then, when the politics shifted, they disowned it. Nothing says law and order like outsourcing violence and calling it patriotism. Welcome. And this is where we pull back the curtain on how money and power really work. Nothing is ever just black and white. To see why piracy became a global business, you have to step into the shoes of a 16th century empire. Global trade is exploding. Silver from the Americas, spices from Asia, sugar and tobacco crossing oceans. The profits are unimaginable, and so are the risks. No kingdom, no matter how powerful, could patrol every sea lane, escort every merchant ship, or protect every cargo. Navies were staggeringly expensive. War was constant. Empires needed a way to project power, cheaply, flexibly, and at scale. Their solution? Outsourcing. Governments began issuing letters of marque. These were official licenses. A kind of legal contract. That gave private ships the right to attack and loot vessels of enemy nations. The violence was identical to piracy. The only difference? The paperwork. With that document, plunder became prize. Captured ships were taken to admiralty courts, where the cargo was declared legitimate. The proceeds were then split. A cut for the crew, a cut for the private investors, and a cut for the state. This wasn't chaos. It was cold, calculated financial engineering. The state didn't pay salaries or absorb losses. Private investors funded the ships. Grizzled captains recruited desperate crews. If the voyage failed, investors lost their money. If it succeeded, everyone profited. The crown got richer without firing a single shot. This was one of history's first large-scale models of privatized risk and socialized reward. Investors financed the violence. Sailors risked their lives. Governments collected revenue and weakened rivals. If it failed, a regrettable loss. If it succeeded, brilliant national defense. Think of Sir Francis Drake, celebrated as an English hero. Under a Spanish flag, he'd have been hanged. England was hardly alone. France licensed thousands of privateers from ports like St. Malo. The Dutch relied on them to fund their war for independence. Even the Ottoman-backed corsairs in the Mediterranean operated with a state blessing. Spain, dripping with New World silver, became the ultimate target. The more Spain tried to control trade, the more profitable privateering became for its enemies. And here's the kicker. Queen Elizabeth didn't just tolerate Drake's raids. She invested in them. So did her courtiers. When Drake returned, laden with Spanish treasure, the crown took its massive share, publicly denying responsibility while privately counting the coins. This created a whole shadow economy. Shipyards, ports, insurers, and lawyers all grew rich on sanctioned theft. Violence was given a price tag and integrated into the financial system. Who paid the real price? The sailor on the deck. His life was harsh, short, and expendable. He was only paid if his ship succeeded. The investors, meanwhile, spread their risk across multiple ventures. The further you were from the action, the safer and richer you became. This blurred the line between legal and illegal beyond recognition. A ship could be a hero one year and an outlaw the next, depending on a treaty signed continents away. The violence never changed. Only the paperwork did. And that's when the system began to crack. Some privateers started asking a dangerous question. We take all the risks. We do all the fighting. The state just gives us a piece of paper, and that paper can be taken away tomorrow. Why are we sharing our profits with a king who's never smelled salt air? They had learned the business model from the state itself. And now, they decided to cut out the middleman. True pirates weren't rebels against the system. They were its most rational graduates. They kept the entire profit, ran their ships with shockingly democratic rules electing captains, voting on decisions, and ignored all borders. For empires, this wasn't just theft. This was a threat. Pirates proved that organized violence didn't require a crown, so the same states that built their power on privateering suddenly declared a war on piracy. Executions became public spectacles. Pirates were transformed from useful assets into monstrous criminals. Why? Not because of morality, because of competition. By the 19th century, with powerful professional navies, states no longer needed their private partners. They could monopolize violence themselves. So privateering was formally banned, not because it was wrong, but because it was obsolete. But the logic never died. It evolved. Today, states still outsource. Private military contractors operate in gray zones. Corporations extract resources with state backing but without accountability. Financial institutions take huge risks, knowing the public may bear the cost if they fail. The model is identical. Privatize the profit, socialize the risk, and maintain plausible deniability. So the next time you hear about a modern pirate, ask yourself, are they breaking the system? Or were they just inspired by its original blueprint? The lesson of history isn't that pirates were noble or states were evil. It's that incentives drive behavior more than laws ever will. When a system rewards ruthless profit and outsources the consequences, people will play the game, with or without permission. History doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. If you're seeing these patterns in our world today, you're paying attention. Subscribe for more. We connect the dots between money, power, and the stories they don't want to settle. I'll see you in the next video.